Hey everyone, we are so excited to be here virtually and together in person to discuss one of our favorite parts of our jobs, working with design. I'm Christa, a researcher at Figma, working on both our community product and collaboration teams.
And I'm Clancy, a data science manager here, also working with community and collaboration.
The goal of our talk tonight, or maybe it's today for you, is to address common barriers to collaborating with data science and research teams, but also to discuss what those benefits are for collaborating with your insights teams. And when we say insights teams throughout this talk, what we really is just shortening research and data. And finally, to build up those insights toolkit, we hope that your team when and how to make the most of your data and research insights during your design process.
Before we even get into all that, I'd love to first acknowledge our amazing teammates who helped inspire this talk. I've been at Figma for 4 years, and Christa for 2 years, and it's been so incredible working with these folks, having the opportunity to inspire each other to build on our thinking and our processes.
Also, one of our super talented designers on the community team, Madeline Lee, designed our slides for us, so we can't take any credit for those, and we legit cannot thank her enough. Being able to tell a story visually like she can is a true gift, and we're forever grateful. So, right off the bat, though, we'd like to address a few hot takes related to both of our roles in a product organization. First, the topic surrounding when to rely on intuition or your insights, and when to think about quantitative insights or qualitative insights. So have you ever heard someone say, I value intuition over insights? Well, yeah, we as humans are taught to strive to be right, so I get it. It's really hard to imagine any external factor or insights that come through that might actually prove otherwise. And in a world where software and products are now being shipped so rapidly, sometimes leadership and product might just push a little bit more on intuition rather than thinking about the entire picture. And often there is this misconception that collecting insights from either data or research will take too long and won't provide potentially any novel information. But in reality, intuition and insights are important, and it doesn't need to be just one or the other. So the more you actually learn, the more you're going to realize how much you don't actually know, and that's a really good thing. That just leaves space for creation of a bigger and bigger opportunities. Having insights from your data scientist and researcher helps you build your experiences, a la bring up that intuition and build up that intuition. So what happens though when your insights might differ from that original intuition that you came into the project with? Well, when intuition disagrees with your insights, it's important to take a step back, figure it out. Is there a bias in the insights, or is there a bias in my intuition? It goes both ways. And again, there's no right or wrong answer, but what's most important is to consider going into these conversations with your team with a general state of curiosity, a low ego, and to assume good intent from your counterpart. And lastly, to have strong assumptions that are weakly held.
And always clearly stated.
He loves that one. Same. And we know this could be its own talk. I could literally talk about this for hours and hours. So we'll keep this conversation going outside of this talk. So how do you deal with this? We'd love to hear about your input. So you can share with us on Twitter or comment on the presentation in the figma.com/community file.
So often when we're talking to product teams, we'll end up having a conversation that comes down to, should we look for qualitative or quantitative insights for this project? This can be for efficiency reasons. Christa and I are no strangers to a divide and conquer strategy. Or it can be because we believe that one type of insights is better suited to the problem at hand. While data and research both have their strengths, we want to highlight that the best insights come from a combined effort. It's easy to look at data to justify what you already believe, and then try to optimize for things that are working well. But this process often fails to find out why certain features don't work quite as well as others. And sometimes you'll look at the data and think, wow, this is working exactly the way we want it to, But then you talk to a few users and you realize they're actually frustrated.
It's not great.
This is where the importance of working with both quantitative and qualitative data is critical. One helps indicate what happened, and the other helps answer why it happened. We'll be sharing several stories from inside Figma today that will show you how our two functions complement one another.
So there are three primary reasons for why you should involve data and research insights into your product design development process. First, faster alignment and decision making. Second, it actually builds a sense of shared vocabulary, which again creates a more cohesive team, which then creates faster build time. And then lastly, build your insights team's design sense. So you help us, which then helps everybody else as well. And being able to frame a problem correctly in the beginning actually helps speed up the process towards finding that right solution for your users. The more you know upfront or that you're equipped with, the faster you'll be able to make decisions and trade-offs in the long run. One way to build alignment and confidence as an entire team is to actually bake in the research time in your timeline while you're planning out the work. This also just helps with transparency across the team so folks don't feel like anyone is blocking one another. We at Figma do this before any quarterly planning meeting or even on the half-yearly planning cycle. We get together, we log all of the big questions we want answered through data and research, and make sure those are accounted for in the entire team's timeline. And the product development teams work best when they're able to easily communicate opportunities, concerns, and needs. This allows us to quickly get aligned and to solve the most important problems for our users. And as an insights team, we want to present information to our teams in a way that makes sense to everybody, right? But often data might think in terms of graphs that may not be as easily consumable as they'd like to think. I literally will sit with Clancy for an hour having him explain these things, but it's really helpful. And then designers in research often think in terms of user goals or behavioral patterns, which may not be as obvious to your data science counterpart. But the most valuable insights come from when connecting these 2 points of view and understanding how observable and ideal behavior maps to the actual user experience.
Yeah, your insights teammates spend a lot of their time trying to identify opportunities and to evaluate the impact of all the work that you do. UX researchers often get to partner very closely with design, but data science, more often than not, is more associated with engineering. Finding a data scientist who's user-centric and has a strong product sense can be difficult, and this is because those skills come from spending time collaborating with product partners who are willing to share their process. When you share your process with your insights partners, you'll find that they become better interpreters and communicators of data because you now have a shared context. They will also be better equipped to contribute to brainstorms and design more complex and impactful experiments, two topics we'll talk about in a few minutes.
Let's do that.
So we'll spend the rest of our time talking through some common design process checkpoints where research and data can help the most while sharing some behind-the-scenes Figma examples.
Yay.
Let's dive in.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the why, but let's actually put that into practice. We're going to walk you through 3 of the most important checkpoints to engage with your insights team. First, the fun part, discovery and brainstorming. Second, when you start to develop your actual design ideas and bring them to life. And then lastly, get them ready for shipping and delivering those design solutions you've created. So let's kick things off with brainstorms. And as many of Figmates, if they're up still, know that this is my favorite part of the process. If I could just facilitate and brainstorm every day, I'd be even happier than I already am today.
Impossible.
And as product designers or anyone making product decisions, a big part of your design process should be gathering insights early to help solidify that intuition later. And early in your design thinking, when everything is still feeling a little fuzzy, is actually the most important time to proactively engage with research and data. And we often work across multiple surfaces, we're on several teams, and can bring in additional context to help the team find common ground with other initiatives. And probably, most importantly, we can help the team zoom way out and understand the problem space more deeply and how your proposed direction actually fits into the broader ecosystem of your company. So we love reading tweets and getting feedback, but it's important that you log us in to help dig into those tweets and better understand the problem space more. And if you don't have an insights team, that's okay. This is a great opportunity for you to reach out to any of your user-facing teammates. So we're talking sales, account managers, your product support. They will be super excited to share what they know with you.
So every great brainstorm starts with great context. Bringing research and data to the table gives people a sense of where things are today and where they can be tomorrow. So the questions you should be asking yourself at this stage are, what have we heard in previous research? What do we know from our data? And how do people currently use these features? So here's a few types of insights that I think you should look at before jumping into your brainstorm. First is personas and information on user segments. These are a great way to align on who you're designing for and often contain lots of insights from previous work. Next is quotes from user research. This can help humanize and ground your insights, reminding the team that this data is coming from real people.
Empathy.
And finally, looking at historic trends can help you understand whether you're heading in the right direction and trying to accelerate growth, or looking to shake things up a little bit. If you feel like this information isn't available to you at this stage, this is a great place to advocate for changes in your processes going forward.
One of the most critical places to start is to ensure you're aligned with the user problems. If you're not familiar enough with the problem space or who you're building for, it's going to be a lot more iterations for you. And you're most likely not going to see the success that you had hoped for or expected. And so jamming with your researcher or data scientist to build shared framing will not only help you as a designer, but will also help make sure y'all are on the same page. And researchers, we've got a lot of frameworks typically in our back pocket to help unblock you during this phase. And typically in this phase, you should be thinking, what are these users currently using, what tool, and where do we see the most drop-off in our own product? Those are really great questions to discuss and share with your insights team. There's a million ways to uncover user problems, trust me, and we're just going to share a couple of them with you today. And if you have a favorite one, throw that in the chat. We'd love to read those. And one of my favorites is laying out that user journey.
Yeah, speaking of user journeys, this is a great example of how we can speak the same language. The relationship between user journeys and funnels is very close. I often hear my design and research collaborators thinking about a problem as a user journey, while a data scientist might be looking at the same information as a funnel. By looking at your user journey as a funnel, you can better see where you have major drop-off points and can identify points of friction in your experience. One example of this is while we were working on the community surface, Christa was presenting some work on how users go from discovering all the amazing resources that we have to publishing their very first resource. One of the insights from her work was just how many steps there were from point A to point B. When we reimagined the user flow as a funnel, we found that the biggest drop-off was actually at the top, which is the best place to find an opportunity in a funnel. And that by making the publish button direct on the community browsing surface, we were able to have huge impact. So this materialized in a product change that helped us grow the number of creative voices sharing their work with the rest of the Figma community.
You'll love to see it. And now that you're confident in the problem space, it's time to put pen to paper, or I guess in our case, like cursor to canvas. And often that can be super intimidating as you start working through your solutions, but don't worry, you're not alone. Having those previous insights that we discussed, as well as opportunities to build even more learnings, specifically now about your design, are all at your ready by keeping collaboration open with your insights team. And we know the design process is long, there's a lot of different directions it might take and different paths along the way. And during this process at Figma, we really lean into maintaining continuous connection with our target user groups during design. This helps our teams make faster and more confident decisions along the way. Some folks think of this stage primarily as the usability testing, but there's so much more you can actually do to get helpful insights throughout your design process. And I have a lot of favorites, as you might tell here. But when I'm working closely with design during this phase in their process, I love concept validation. This helps to build up your confidence as we move quickly through your iterations. And questions you should be asking yourself at this phase is, am I moving my design in the right direction? And does this idea actually match to those user problems that we discussed previously? You might have even felt a sense of spiraling with your design, which is always an indicator for your insights team, especially researcher, to hop in and help unblock you. And during this phase, we're all moving really fast, right? It's like rapid testing. But it's most important that we're tracking your open questions and our hypotheses surrounding those questions. By ensuring you're asking the right questions, you will actually have confidence that the feedback you're receiving from these research sessions is accurate and actionable. And you can think of these as checklists to move forward. Did we validate? Did we invalidate that one? And I love to give a big shout out to two previous researchers I used to work with, Abby Kelly and Christa Plano, for creating these amazing frameworks that we have here.
This is another great example of how we can learn to speak the same language. When you're asking a question to be answered by data, there's a few core pieces that can make it really easy for your insights counterpart to understand. You definitely want to include a segment or type of engagement that you're interested in learning more about, a relevant population that you want to look at, and a time scale. Asking a question over all time is way different than asking what happened last week.
Yes.
So a lot of times when we're talking to designers, we hear questions around, how many people are clicking X? And really the question that we want to hear is something like, what % of weekly active users on Surface Y are doing X? And there's a slight difference there, because what we really want to know is, what jobs to be done are you interested in? What user goal are you trying to understand? That way we can pull in more relevant context and information that you might not have been aware that we even had. I have heard from collaborators in the past that it can be intimidating to ask questions to your insights team, because I usually respond with like a million questions of my own. This is an expected part of the process. I'm trying to de-blur your question and make sure that I'm providing you the most relevant information that I have. So some questions your insights partner might ask to de-blur if they don't have enough context is something like, what's the overall reason you're interested in this question? What broader problem or idea are you hoping to answer? Or how will this help you solve that? And then also something like, do you have any hunches or ideas about what the answer is before looking at the data? And why or why not? This is a great opportunity to check your bias.
Yeah.
If you already think you know the answer, you may not like it if you see the opposite in the data. And then finally, what do you plan to do with this information? I want to make sure that when I take the time to get you some insights, they're going to help you answer a question and move product development forward. And so often, as products evolve, we create user stories, right? And these drive how we think our users are engaging with our products. These stories often contain assumptions around users' needs or context they might find themselves in. It can be very helpful to check that these assumptions align with what users are really experiencing. Many times throughout the product development process, I'm asking myself these types of questions. Is this the largest opportunity in this space? And does our solution actually match users' needs? So a great example of this is related to the recent updates we made to the comments experience. When the work first kicked off, the problem that we were trying to solve was feature discovery. Christa was doing some initial research, and some feedback that we were hearing was that file creators were worried that leaving important context in comments wouldn't be seen by their collaborators in the file. And of course, you might remember that in the old comments experience, you had to switch into comment mode to see the comments on the canvas. Hearing this feedback, we put together a context matrix, which overlaid whether there were comments in the file that could contain important context and whether users checked the comments view when they were viewing a file. The original opportunity we were focused on was the lower right quadrant. How do we get more people to discover comments? What we found after looking at the context data was that the perceived problem, my collaborators won't see important context in comments, was supported by our data. So with this in mind, we were able to make better decisions as we continued to design changes to the comments experience that you all enjoy today. You can read more about how data and research help bring comments to life in a blog post by my colleague Emily on the Figma blog.
And so we're on to our third and final point in your process where engaging with customer insights could be beneficial to the success of your feature. Getting your product in front of real users is so exciting. You've made it this far in your designs. But let's be real, it's also a bit scary. It's pretty vulnerable. And this is typically the most common time in the process where research and data are looped in. And although collecting customer insights are important at this stage, if in the beginning phases you're all not aligned, it makes this stage really challenging for your insights teams. For example, if the concept isn't validated, it's really hard for us to make sure we're actually measuring the right metrics further down this funnel. And giving your target users early access to features is great for better understanding the impact of this feature or functionality that you've built in their workflow to under real conditions. And so going from no one seeing it in the real world to then everyone all at once is typically not ideal. And so once it's released, it's harder and harder to make changes and to iterate. So running an alpha or a beta makes it great for testing and iterating so you don't have to revert later and re-educate your user base. So at Figma, we love to run an alpha or a closed beta. I even wrote a little playbook on it to help scale. Stay tuned. And this is really beneficial to see the feature in the wild. It provides your team with impactful fixes and opportunities to include before fully launching it into the wild by having easy access to this user feedback via your research insights. Secondly, it helps with anticipated usage. You can start to develop insights and trends for what might happen when you launch. Will this feature be used regularly? Will there be a long tail until you actually see that impact happen? And lastly, you can actually build up some product marketing awareness. So loop in your content team, loop in your product marketing folks. This is a great opportunity to test virality and messaging. It's a win-win for all. And the question at this phase, this final phase that you should be asking yourself is, how are people actually using this feature? And one of my favorite examples, bringing it back to comments, is when we launched our alpha and beta for this updated comments experience. We had confidence in the concept and direction, but knew that micro interactions were going to be so hard to get right, but extremely important for a better user experience. And because it was critical to have users provide us with feedback in the most realistic state, we turned it on for a subset of lucky users to provide us feedback over the course of a couple months. This gave our team clear interaction changes we need to build before and after we launched.
So one of the most important things your insights team can do is demonstrate how much impact your team has had when launching new products or features. This impact could be increasing user satisfaction or driving up key company metrics. So some questions you need to be asking yourself at this phase are, did we accomplish what we set out to do?
Good one.
And how does our work fit into the overall company priorities? This is typically what teams are most familiar with, and realistically, we could take an entire separate talk on this topic.
I mean, config 2023, I don't know, I'm just trying to pitch another talk for myself.
I'll see you there. For a sneak peek, we'll put some thoughts in our companion file on the Figma community. So in summary, we'll hope that you'll remember that working with your insights team speeds up your process and helps your team build alignment. There are ways to engage with research and data at every stage of the product development process. And there's tons of frameworks and techniques to choose from. So find the ones that work best for your team.
Yeah. And we just shared a lot of ways to engage with insights. And you don't have to use them all, we promise. We're just hoping that you're walking away feeling a little bit more confident to engage earlier and more often with insights and your lovely insights teammates. All of these frameworks and resources are shared in the community, so go to figma.com/community.
That's all from us today.
You can follow me, he's not on Twitter, at Christa_UXR for more hot takes, research questions, and some golf content. Thank you all so very much, and we hope you enjoy the rest of Config 2022. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.